Water. 4,000 people, most of them children, die every day because they don't have access to clean drinking water. For us, that's a complete tragedy. And by the time that we finish this talk, in 18 minutes, 50 children would have died. For us, poverty is the biggest issue facing the world today. And that's why, 10 years ago, we joined the United Nations, because we decided that we wanted to do something about it. We worked in places such as Sierra Leone, Indonesia, Timor-Leste. And unfortunately, too often, we found ourselves in situations like this. And like this. We spent so much time in conferences, in fancy hotels, talking about how to solve poverty. We spent so much time talking with people with similar ideas to us, with similar worldviews to our own, with similar backgrounds to our own. And what this meant was that we lost touch with reality. We firmly believe that poverty is an issue that needs to be solved by everybody, not just be left to a bunch of bureaucrats and diplomats. It's far too important for that. So as we were frustrated, we discovered this whole new world of technology and innovation. This new world is made up of scientists, engineers, inventors, designers. I think the TED crowd represents that type of person. And these people are coming up with simple solutions, simple yet innovative solutions to some of the biggest challenges facing the world today.
One of the examples of these simple yet innovative solutions that we are talking about is this. This is a gravity-fed water purification device that removes 99.99% of waterborne bacteria. Another example is this. This is a simple desalination device. You pull the seawater, leave it under the sun, and you have drinking water. Another example is this. This is a drip irrigation, which significantly improves the agricultural output, thus increasing the income for the farmers, without using much water. And this is my favorite. You can charge your mobile phone using bicycle power. Normally, people in developing countries have to walk long distances and pay to charge their mobile phone, typically using a generator.
But the more we got to know this world of innovation and technology, we realized that it's not perfect. There are two fundamental challenges with it. The first relates to quality. There's a lot of junk out there. For example, there are a lot of low-quality, unbranded solar lights being sold to villages in the developing world, and they have a less than 2-month lifespan. This is simply unacceptable. The second challenge is that the technologies just are not reaching the people who need them. And if they are reaching them, the people can't afford them. So we left our jobs at the UN and started our own organization. We put together a catalogue of innovative, promising technologies that address the main problems faced by the developing world. And we connect them to the organizations in the developing world. So how it works is this. Organizations in developing countries who are already working with their communities review the catalogue of the technologies on our site. They submit a proposal outlining how they're going to use that technology. We then put the proposal up on our website. We raise funds towards it from anybody. You can donate, anybody can donate, a corporation can donate. Once fully funded, then the products are sent to the organization and they're distributed.
So since our launch, we have implemented a number of projects, and this is one of the examples. This is in Papua, which is the most remote and the poorest province in Indonesia. We brought hundreds of solar lanterns to the indigenous communities and replaced dirty, expensive, and dangerous kerosene lamps. Another project, we brought this Q-drum with which you can transport 50 liters of water in one go. Previously, people, mostly women, were making many trips to fetch the same amount of water. And another example is this. This is in Central Java in Indonesia. We brought fuel-efficient cook stoves, which produces very little smoke, that uses the waste biomass, such as corn cobs and coconut shells. This replaces the traditional way of cooking, using firewood like this. In a kitchen like this. This is a real kitchen in Timor-Leste. And you see the impact of the smoke by looking at this photo. This is a blackened corn hanged on the ceiling inside a kitchen. And you can imagine what the inside of the lung will look like. The indoor pollution is a major cause of death in the developing countries, killing 1.6 million people every year.
Now, the places that we're talking about in Papua, Indonesia, and in Okusi, Timor-Leste, they're in what we call the last mile, extremely remote, difficult places to get to. And you can see the little red spot on the island of Timor, which is the enclave of Okusi, which is surrounded by Indonesia. To get to Okusi, you first fly into Dili, the capital of Timor-Leste, and then you get a ferry to Okusi, which takes around 13 hours overnight. And here you can see people sleeping. The ferry goes a couple of times a week, although it doesn't always run. Once you get to Okusi, internal transportation is a big challenge. The district is known for extremely poor road and bridge infrastructure and very dangerous river crossings during the rainy season. And here you can see one of our local partners carrying the fuel-efficient stoves across the river so they can reach the communities that they're destined for. Now here, this is not a typical last mile situation. This is Japan, and today marks the 13th day after the devastating earthquake and tsunami. Toshi was actually in Japan, in Tokyo, at the time that the disaster hit. A couple of days after, we received requests for solar lamps and solar-powered hearing aids, which we have since sent. We never thought that we'd be sending Kopernik technology to Japan, but here we are. Let's talk about distribution for a moment. We're not about giving things away for free. We realize the problems inherent with that approach. But what we realize is that the products, the technologies that we're talking about and the target populations that we're talking about simply can't afford them. So we take the middle road, something between the free market and development assistance. And we have a number of interesting distribution models. So, for example, in Indonesia, we have a stove project where the payment for the stoves actually doubles as a membership fee in a savings and loan cooperative. So the women are encouraged to save, and then they have a nest egg that they can rely upon during difficult times. In Okusi, Timor-Leste, we work with networks of women's self-help groups where the members sell the lights to other community members, and they earn a small commission from the sale of each light. The lights are sold at a subsidy, but the revenue that's raised from the sale of the lights finances distribution costs, awareness-raising costs, and of course, purchases more lights for other villages. And then in Inner Mongolia, we have an investment model where the donor pre-finances the purchase of all the lights. The lights are then sold by our local partner at the full cost, but over a several-month repayment period. Once the money is collected back, it's returned to the donor, who then reinvests that money in another location, benefiting even more people. Now, once the products are distributed, we collect feedback. And this is really important to us and relates back to the issue of quality. We want to make sure that all of the products on our site are of high quality, do what they say they're going to do, and are appropriate for the harsh conditions of much of the developing world. So we collect feedback from the community members and from the local organizations and ask them also for suggestions for improvement and ask them to rate it, Amazon style. We then pass that feedback on to the technology providers, the manufacturers of the product, and we also make it public via our site so that future technology seekers will know what other people thought of it.
So we have talked about one type of technology dissemination, bringing off-the-shelf technology from one country to another. And this works very well, but it's not perfect. It's expensive to ship, and custom is really unpredictable, and carbon footprint is massive. So we added another type of technology, what we call do-it-yourself technology, that you can construct, the people in the developing countries can construct themselves using locally available materials. And this is one of the examples, cone sheller, invented at MIT's D-Lab. With this tool, people can shell cones much faster with much less effort. And previously, people were using their hands and taking their time to do the same. And on our website, we share easy-to-follow, step-by-step instructions. So anybody with a metal sheet and simple tool can construct this useful cone sheller. Another example is this. This is a biomass briquette that replaces firewood, thus slows down the pace of deforestation. This is made using waste biomass, such as rice husks, bamboo, and coconut shell. And again, we share the instructions on our website. Anybody with a drum and waste biomass can make this charcoal. So the way we disseminate this do-it-yourself technology is quite different. We share open source instructions on our website, and anybody who wants to make it can make it. But we don't stop there. We also provide seed capital and necessary training when needed. And this is an example in Kenya. We provided $350, tiny amount, for 13 Kenyan women so that they can purchase necessary tools and basic training so that they can start making the charcoal and selling, paving the way for their own self-reliance.
So we've talked about how we connect life-changing technology to people in the developing world. And since we launched over a year ago, on Kopernik's birthday actually, we've reached over 25,000 people, and we have huge plans for the future. And we no longer spend time in fancy hotels talking about how to solve poverty. So to end with, we'd like to show you a very short video of some of our work in Timor-Leste.
Now, lahim now, make it by la faukan, me makes him now mi honest mi hon mais na mi honest now now kalo li an anok no in kalo kana school efeka now na school na be moxin may chin half messe mes kalo la high mess na la fluit now tem het on tainsin only na be hay sinti hem pakle gedram I hem sinti na leo.
Kesulitannya sebelum saya mendapat kompor biomas ini, saya memasuk di rumah pakai kayu, dan kayu juga setengah mati. Sekarang saya sudah membantu dengan kompor biomas ini menggunakan bahan bakar, sangat irit bahan bakar, cepat digunakan memasak. Inang isin ruai hane dala barak sira suspira tebes tambah doko si sentro Saudi ne duni ame mai fulang hane sira isin rua kari kami hateni sira isin rua ona fulang ame barizisto sira ninare he sira ne uma sing ahine he benefício tebes Miami tambah dala barak hane ame la ahe eletricidade ne duni quando calambot ema mai precisa ame bolo ame atu bahare ema isin rua ya fatindo kruma ambele uja ahine hodiba e depois hodi leno sira tambah ujahi lampu ne ladu narsa cada vez ema pendarahan mas itala hatene itala belhare ita ujahi ne hodi hare depois hodi kontrola sira na fate.
The charcoal project was trying to find an alternative fuel for places that cooked with wood. With a very basic kiln, you can turn any plant matter into charcoal that you could use as a cooking fuel. That would lessen the burden on trees to provide fuel for cooking.
Biasa masyarakat petik jagung pakai tangan, tapi kita buat alat pipil jagung ini itu sangat mudah. Setelah kita buat carikan pipil jagung itu bisa membantu tenaga manusia. Kita buat alat pipil jagung ini itu sangat mudah untuk membantu masyarakat.
Danke, Emma.